Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. If you are writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, even if I can't read them all on the channel. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is also PG-13, so if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last story we heard. The title of the story is Tajiia, and today we are reading chapter 18. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific about either City of the Ancients or Tajiia and which chapter. Now let's start. Tajiia, chapter 18. Severed, Brother, and Truth. Joshua, a witch in Tharkek's original group, had come out of her bug form, and no one seemed near, so she extended her eye down the tunnel and around corners. She didn't see or hear anyone. Then, suddenly she felt something on her extension. A bug was biting her. Joshua quickly had her eye shrink, and she scraped the bug off the wall. As her eyeball went past the spot where the bug bit her, she saw a sword hit the wall. Then she felt like she couldn't see. "What just happened?" asked Joshua as her eye went back in her head. But it wasn't all there. The detracting eye had pulled the bug, and the bug tumbled around in the air. It came out of bug form and landed beside her. "I was trying to warn you," said Mykela, who had also been in Tharkek's group. "I can't quite think to people as a bug." "I can't see out of my right eye," stated Joshua. "Shh," said Mykela. "There were 2 soldiers there. You want me to find the rest of your eye, or—" Then suddenly they heard the boots of some soldiers clank on the ground, and Joshua grabbed Mykela's arm. "Don't leave me," she said. "What spell should we use?" asked Mykela. "Small," replied Joshua. "I'm tired of standing on the wall." The soldiers rounded the bend and saw them. One motioned, and they charged them. Mykela hadn't even started the small spell, so he did the next best thing. He instantly remembered how Tajiia had made the fire jump to the candle during her first test. He saw the flame on the torch, and he split it, and commanded it to go to the soldiers in the group. Then he pushed Joshua out of the way of a swinging sword. The sword missed him initially, but the soldier went to ram the sword into him. Mykela saw his life flash before his eyes, but before the sword hit him, his clothes turned to armor, and the soldier's armor turned to clothes. The clothes didn't protect the soldiers from the flames. The soldiers on fire were screaming in fear and pain. The ones not on fire were backing away from those on fire. The commander was yelling at the soldier with the torch and accusing him of lighting his fellow soldiers on fire. "I didn't do it," yelled the soldier. "The flame just jumped over to them." Then the soldier's eyes widened as he saw the commander's sword come for him. He fell to the floor and grabbed his stomach. "Flames don't jump like that," said the commander. He turned back to assess the situation. 3 soldiers seemed like they were on fire, and he didn't have a blanket available to throw on the fire to put it out. The commander didn't know what to do with his men. Then his eyes landed on the witch and warlock. "You!" He went to charge them. Both Joshua and Mykela had started saying the words to their spells, and both became small flying bugs. Joshua didn't fly straight, but she was able to fly closer to the ceiling and out of sight. Mykela thought to her, "Do you hear me? Should we go for your eye? Could we sew it back on? I wish I could think to people as a bug." Joshua thought back, "Yes, I hear you. I don't know where my eye is. I don't know if we could sew it back on or not. Your eyes should be near my post, and we need that warning written in that book Chancellor Wycarl wants us to write. What a danger! They flew off together and away from the commander with the burning soldiers. Also, the smell of burning flesh was awful, and the smoke made it hard to see, even with 2 working eyes. Artur got Tajiia's attention. Can we put out the torches? He glanced at Arsuea. I guess I'm not worried about our people making a flame because that was the first test. He motioned to Tajiia. Once she knew the rules, she passed. He looked back at Tajiia. The smoke from the torches is a problem. Do our people know how to see in the dark? Asked Tajiia. Will the soldiers just start swinging their swords if they can't see? Arsuea said gently, people will do a lot of things if they live in fear. Some people will protect the ones they love. Others will only do what they have to do to live. There's no way to know what the soldiers will do. Some may be scared of the dark. Some may not. You already escalated the fear among the soldiers, put in Artur. He held up his hands. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but the soldiers haven't really feared us before. They usually cut through a lot of us and then bring some of us to prison so they can show the king their work. Mykela spoke up. When I was captured, I didn't know if they were going to kill me or imprison me. But before you rescued me, there wasn't much difference. She motioned with her head. Artur is the only known warlock alive that managed to escape prison. Yes, replied Artur. But that was in the earlier days of this king. I don't think I could do it again. He paused. Then he looked at Tajiia. Actually, I know I could do it again. You've taught us a lot. He laughed a nervous laugh. Tajiia nodded her head once and then started putting out the soldiers' torches as they went through her air walls. The mountain walls had stones within them that glowed, so the tunnels were not absolutely dark, but the glowing stones were in random places. As torches went out, commanders would turn to the torchbearers and motion, but then they started yelling at them, saying things like, How can you be so clumsy to put out the flame? Torchbearers would say they hadn't put out the flame. And the commanders would argue that there was no wind in the tunnels, so obviously the torchbearer did something to make the flame go out. Now the witches, warlocks, and few wizards felt they had an advantage, since most of them knew the tunnels. A few actually thought to relight the torchbearer's torch. The commanders of those torchbearers soon killed them, after commanders asked them how they did that, and then plunged in their swords before the torchbearer could give an answer. The commanders then commanded someone else to carry the torch, if the torch hadn't gone out when the torchbearer dropped it. The witching community took this opportunity to attack. Mostly, they didn't have lethal spells, so they would have to use their spells to give themselves an advantage in fighting. Joshua and Macroon made it back to Macroon's post. They came out of bug form and started looking for Joshua's eye. Macroon said a spell for light, and they started looking, but they had their ears peeled for any noise. I was a bug posted on this wall, so it should be around here, somewhere, stated Macroon. He swung his torch towards her. I'm surprised your eye isn't bleeding. I know the spell to stop myself from bleeding, stated Joshua. Do you think if we find my eye, we could just sew it back on? Macroon shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. I'll look around and you think to Tajiia to see what she thinks. Macroon bent over closer to the floor and started looking once again. Tajiia received the thoughts and thought back that she didn't know. She felt all parts of one's body had life flowing through it and could not go long without that life. She compared to someone picking a flower and placing it in water right away versus not placing it in water. The flower not in water would wilt much faster, Tajiia thought. And that's just the simple part of it. As far as I know, a flower doesn't see. So we might get it fast enough and sew it on, but we would have to get those sight connections right. So we shouldn't worry about it? Asked Joshua. Tajiia turned to Arshwea, and Arshwea looked up at Tajiia. Tajiia was about to explain what she received. Never mind, my groom found it, but it is quite dirty. We will bring it. Tajiia raised her eyebrows as she suddenly realized that Joshua expected her to sew the eye back on. She explained things to Arshwea. Arshwea shook her head. No, dear. It's not expected. It's a best hope. You know so much more magic than any of us, and you know the witch language. Maybe you can think of words to say. Maybe you can't. But I ask you to try. Yes, stated Artur. Try, because that would make our community braver. Tajiia reached in a pouch and pulled out her stack of books. Before she read, she looked at Arshwea once again. I've been connecting to many witches and warlocks, as has your mother. Arshwea motioned to Akel, and Akel nodded. Then Arshwea continued, we will keep in contact with as many as we can. Tajiia nodded, then found the book she was looking for. She put the others back in her pouch, enlarged the one to the correct size, and then opened it and started reading. Balak's brother was once again near him, and Amira was not far away. Balak's brother also wasn't near anyone else, and he carried a small torch. Balak thought perhaps his brother got it off the wall of the tunnel, as there were a few places where there were torches, although the torches wouldn't have a flame when the witches and warlocks expected a visitation from the soldiers. Baltur, said the father's voice, why have you betrayed us and joined the soldiers? Baltur held the torch and saw the father's image in the mirror. I didn't betray you. I'm helping you get your son back. I know Balak didn't lose his way in the woods. He joined those wicked fools. If those wicked fools didn't exist, we could live in peace. We could visit other villages again. Everything would be like you told me. But King Pomodestone has to protect us from these people. That is where you are wrong, said the father's voice. We had peace before King Pomodestone. He is the one that brought such destruction. These people lived among us, and they helped us. Lies! Baltur waved the small torch in front of himself. But the father didn't jump back. So he pushed the torch even closer, and then closer, till he hit the mirror. Baltur's anger shot up even more. Balak decided to see what his brother would do to him. So he had his own image appear in the mirror. His image said, and if you found me in these halls, what would you do to me? Would you obey your king and kill me, like King Pomodestone ordered you to do? Baltur waved the torch toward the mirror, and he knew it was a trick. So he said, no, of course I wouldn't kill you. I would just bring you home to Mom and Dad. Balak knew his brother well enough. He had heard those same words said to his parents on numerous occasions. And then Baltur did exactly what he said he wouldn't do. So Balak knew his brother would kill him. He sighed to himself as he thought. His brother was bigger and stronger than he was. Then Balak knew what to do. No, thought Invariant, we don't kill if we don't have to. Besides, you've never taken on the form of an elephant. He knows I'm here, so he'll tell King Pomodestone, and King Pomodestone will have my parents killed, thought Balak. But your parents will be upset about your brother's death, thought Invariant. Yes, I know. But Baltur's dishonesty won't catch them anymore. They always hope he's telling the truth for once. He's a problem in the village, stealing, killing animals, bullying the little girls by burning their dolls. I have to do this. Before he changed his mind, he finished saying the words to the spell. Baltur jerked around and saw the big elephant in the tunnel. He waved his small torch towards the elephant. You don't scare me. You're just an image anyway, because you wouldn't fit in these tunnels to get this far in. Baltur pressed closer to the elephant. Bollock had seen Waggler raise up and come down, so he concentrated on seeing Waggler do that. He raised up, and lucky for him, he wasn't as big an elephant as Waggler had been. He threw his front feet out and came down on his brother. This startled Baltur as the elephant knocked him back. The elephant wasn't an image like the father had been. That was for all the little girls you told you would burn like you did their dolls, if they ever became witches, said Bollock. His voice sounded deeper coming out of the elephant. He raised up and went down on Baltur again. Baltur was frantically scooting back and shouting, man down, elephant attacking. That was for all the animals you killed because you took away food from families. Bollock raised up and came down again. Then the grains ran out, and he was Bollock once again. Several soldiers skidded to a stop behind Baltur, who laid crumpled on the ground. The only thing Bollock could think of was the first spell he tested on, and he said it, and caught Baltur and the soldiers on fire. Varant appeared behind him and placed his hands on Bollock's shoulders. That's good enough. Become a bug. Bollock and Varant became bugs, with grains enough for the spell to last between 4 and 5 hours. They flew up high on the wall. One soldier dropped to the ground and rolled around to put out the fire. Then he stood up and patted the places that still felt hot. Then he glanced at the other soldiers and told them to do the same, and they did without hesitation. The first soldier looked at Baltur. He had nothing to put out the flames, and the young man wasn't moving. He looked back at his comrades. I think home is too far away to bring him back. He's still burning, said another soldier as he motioned. How'd you know to do that anyway? My mother, replied the first soldier. She said, if you don't have a blanket, then use the ground as a blanket. I didn't know if it would work or not, but it was all I could think of. Well, I'm glad she told you, and you listened to her, replied the second soldier, as he patted a few more places on himself to put out the flames. Yeah, me too, said the first. Unfortunately, soldiers tied her to the stake and burned her alive. She couldn't roll around. If she were started the second soldier, she wasn't a witch, and the king would have never accused her if there were no such people. Ursula's voice echoed in the tunnel. What if she were a witch? Would you think her death served justice? The first soldier looked up and around. Show yourself, you coward. Anton, what was your mother's name? Asked Ursula's voice. If I tell you, you will automatically say she was a witch, replied Anton. The other soldiers with him looked around for the voice. Ah, I see it in your mind. Her name was Cahandra. We could show you her book. If she was your mother, there is a chance that you could read the book. Maybe it was someone else with the same name. But I would want to see for myself if I were you. Anton glanced at the others. The second soldier said quietly, I would want to know too. I want to know. They killed my sister the same way. My sister never hurt anyone. The two looked at the other two soldiers. One of the others motioned to Baltur. I heard a voice accusing him of killing people's animals. Why did he do that? Was it tax and food? Or just because? I didn't join this army to kill Grandma's chicken so she couldn't eat. I mean, King Pomodestone suspects every grandmother of being a witch. Why? The three looked at the fourth. The fourth shook his head. I don't know what to believe. I would like to know about your mother. If she were a witch, did they kill her just because of that? Did she do something? He held out his hands. I'm not accusing her. I want to know. Are witches just born? Or are there people who corrupt them? I want to know. Anton looked up to the ceiling. We want to know. This time they heard Varen's voice. Press against the wall, and I will make you invisible until we can figure out how to get you to the book. The 4 soldiers pressed against the wall and turned invisible just before a group of soldiers walked through. To the soldiers passing through, the invisibility wall looked like a tunnel wall, and the passage seemed narrower. It was the same way throughout the tunnel, but the soldiers stopped and looked at Baltor. One checked to see if he was alive, stated he was not. This spooked several in the group, but they continued on their path. Moloch thought quietly and sadly to Varen. I just killed my own brother. What kind of person am I? Varen thought back. Your brother would have killed you. You were protecting yourself and your parents. But what if he could have changed? My mother always said one day he would change. He would see what he's done, and he'll change, thought Moloch. Arswea thought in. Some people can and will change. That is what we hope for the soldiers Varent has hidden right now. But some never will. Many queens here were reading your thoughts beforehand and know your brother started lying to your parents early on. And we saw through your eyes, with an enhanced spell, that there was no remorse in any of his wrongs. Moreover, Phaedra stated that it seemed like he did some of those things in your memory before he joined King Pomodestone. Why did he have to be like that? Thought Moloch mournfully. I wanted to be like my older brother and hang out with him and let him teach me things. Well, until I saw what he did. Poor little Solandra will never be the same. Arswea thought to him, think on your reasons. I know at points you were teetering on revenge, and that's not good. You must remain in protection. You killed your brother to protect innocent people, including your parents, and your parents gave him plenty of opportunities to change. Moloch, as a bug, nodded his head, but he was still very sad, and he wanted to go home and explain things to his parents. Tajiia, with help from others, including Hubbub, cleaned the eye and started stitching it back in. Tajiia said several spells, but the life was gone out of it. Joshua looked better with the eyeball in the socket, but the eyeball was almost colorless. Tajiia had used strands of magic to stitch it in, and she said a spell to push life into the dead part over several hours. But she didn't think it would work. She tried not to focus on the bad result and just focus on positive. I've read in one of my books that life finds a way, and I've seen seemingly dead plants revive. I've seen animals recover from broken limbs. I don't want to give false hope to you, but, well, at least she has her eyeball in her socket, put in Phaedra. People look at you funny and talk behind your back when you're broken or look different. Having the eyeball there will make people think she is blind in that eye, and they may think she was blind since birth. And then Arswea told Tajiia about the soldiers. I know how to get them to the tree, said Tajiia. I will make them small and put them in a pouch. I will warn them first. We will bring them inside the tree and release them. If they change to our side, okay. If not, then we make them small and take them out. The queens in the room nodded, so Tajiia proceeded with the plan. Several groups of soldiers had passed the 4 hidden soldiers, and the hidden soldiers were getting tired of standing. Tajiia used air walls to block the tunnels around her before she became visible. Suddenly, Tajiia appeared before the men, and Varric dropped his spell. This startled the men. Then Varric and Balak undid their spells and stood beside Tajiia. Tajiia spoke slowly and contemplatively. "We appreciate..." She looked at Balak. "Yes, it's human," stated Balak. "We appreciate you being open to learning about us. At the same time, we must protect ourselves. We can't just let soldiers know our secrets. So I'm going to temporarily shrink you and put you in my pouch." She paused. "So you are a witch," stated the fourth soldier. Anton interrupted and said, "She didn't have to warn us." "Yes, I understand, but I mean, don't you just mix herbs and..." "We were just invisible," put in the third soldier. They looked at Tajiia and fell silent. "I will shrink you and put you in my pouch. When we get to the special place, I will take you out." At this point, a regular human has never tried to read one of our books. But, as queen, I can read it to you if need be. Antoine just nodded his head as he thought about things. Tajiia shrunk them, put them in her pouch, then headed back to where she would put down the tree. The witching community never had the tree down in the mountain when soldiers were running around. At least, they hadn't since the last Grand Queen. The queens and chancellors all met Tajiia in the chamber. She put down the tree, and they entered before she released the men. The soldiers were a little nervous when they saw all the people. Arswaya smiled kindly at them. "Hello, I was the voice you heard. It is a rather easy spell. At least when you know the right Grand Queen." Arswaya motioned to Tajiia. "Now, I believe one of you is Anton, and your mother's name was Calandra." The wrestler was not a chancellor. He was in the room. He leaned down to Tajiia and said quietly, "We have to completely trust them until they show us otherwise. That's why Arswaya told them you were Grand Queen." Tajiia nodded her head. Arswaya walked over to the column of books, and she started scanning. She glanced over and asked, "How long has Calandra been dead?" "Ah, geez," said Antoine. "I don't know exactly. Maybe a dozen or more years." Arswaya pushed some buttons on the column, and the column reformed itself where the inside came out and the outside went in. "Ah, here is Calandra Domstoffer." She looked at Antoine. Antoine looked befuddled for a moment. "Oh, Domstoffer was her maiden name." Arswaya took out the book and handed it to Antoine. "The book will have the maiden name if the person became a witch before she was married, which is most of us." Antoine took the book. The cover looked blank. He turned it to look at the spine and saw the name. Phaedra motioned to the benches. "You are welcome to sit down." The four soldiers sat down, and Anton opened the book. He saw writing in there, but he could not read. He ran his fingers along the text. "I see writing, but I can't read," he sighed. "I mean, I know enough to recognize my mother's name, but..." "I have an idea," said Tajiia. "What if the book reads itself to him?" "Tajiia," started Arswaya, "our books are personal. He may not want everyone to know the contents." Anton looked at the other soldiers. What is in the book?" "It's our stories," stated Arswaya. "Mine starts the first day I came to a meeting, and it tells of my first test and a lot of things between then and now." "What would be in there that I wouldn't want others to know?" asked Anton. Chancellor Walcott said, "Well, it may identify others who are witches, warlocks, wizards, etc. It may talk about things that no one else knows but you, but your mother knew about her life. I'm here, stated Anton. I believed for a good part of my life that King Pomodestone would have never burned my mother if he didn't believe she was an evil witch. And now I look around at you and, well, call me blind, but I don't see evil. I thought my mother wasn't a witch. Someone told me that you can't actually burn a witch. They always escape. When a person burns, it proves their innocence. But then you just killed an innocent person, stated Tajiia. Ator caught on that she was very angry, but several were stepping to her to console her. I know, stated Anton. That part always bothered me. Why burn innocent people just because you can't prove they're not a witch? His body shuddered and tears started to flow. My mom never hurt anyone. She helped people. She raised me without a father because my father died hunting when I was young. What did she do to deserve such punishment? The chamber was quiet as Anton grieved the loss of his mother. The other 3 soldiers had their own tears. The witches and warlocks wanted to console them, but just let them grieve quietly. After some time, and they were ready to listen to the book, Anton wiped away his tears and said, I don't know anything about magic, but if the book reads itself to me, is there some way that I can have it stop if I don't want to continue? Tajiia said, that won't be a problem. Problem is that, yes, it's human, said several around her. Please say the words out loud, stated Phaedra. The other 3 may know someone that they want to read the book of. I will speak aloud, stated Tajiia. But the book has already told me that Calandra wished that her son could read her book. The other books may not have the same wish over them. Everyone glanced around and realized what Tajiia meant. The 4 soldiers looked confused. Arswea smiled gently. If you walk up to the column and take a book, the pages will all look blank. Only I can read my story. Well, only me and my queen, she motioned to Tajiia and then continued. Anyone else I would have to give permission to first. Tajiia said the spell, and the book began reading the story of Calandra. Anton smiled at the beginning. He recognized some of the stories, at least the non-witch part. He remembered his grandparents telling him such things about his mother. He didn't remember much about his father from his own memories, but his mother had said wonderful things about him, and the book was repeating these things, especially as it told about their first meeting and their next several encounters. Anton's eyes widened as he sat up straighter when the book revealed that his father had been a warlock. His shock went further when his father died because he couldn't escape the soldiers. But the book then said that Calandra, his mother, would lie to the village and say he died while hunting, so no one would ask questions. Wait, stop, said Anton, and the book became quiet immediately. I am what killed my father? What did my father do? I became a soldier because, well, I thought, if we purged the land of witches and warlocks, then the king wouldn't burn innocent people like my mother. But he set the book on the bench beside himself. The king, for whatever reason, said Arswea softly, the king is scared of us, so he tells these lies. People protect their own selves. Sometimes it's just a matter of trusting the wrong person, who in turn gives our name to protect themselves. Anton gripped his fist and he stood up. He shook his fist to the ceiling and groaned, That's just so wrong! My mother and father died for naught. He groaned again. And now look at me. I belong to the group that killed my parents. You don't have to belong to that group anymore, Arswea said softly. But you can't just leave, stated Anton. Then I say we die fighting the king's men, said the fourth soldier. Arswaya spoke to just Anton. Would you like to go to a private chamber and have the book continue to read itself to you? Anton looked around. As a soldier, he knew it was dangerous to have yourself separated from your fellow men, but they already didn't have their swords or armor. I guess it is my turn to trust you. Yes, I would like some private time alone with my mother's story. He looked at the other three stories. I know I want to fight for my mother and father, but I want to know the rest of the story. The other three nodded, so Artur led Anton off to a private chamber. Tajiia didn't understand why Anton didn't want them to separate him from his fellow men, but she didn't voice that question now. She just knew that if she were alone when the soldiers came for her, she would have an easier time to escape without having to extend the spell over someone else, or to keep them quiet, or whatever else. The other three wanted to have a book read to them as well, but they knew the witch community needed to handle the soldiers in the mountain and were content to also go into a chamber to wait. Tajiia was sad for the men, but she was happy and hopeful. She was happy that the four men weren't as deeply set in their hate against them as Commander Poulton seemed to be. At the same time, she knew without Arswaya or someone else telling her that not all the soldiers who were open to learning the witch community wasn't all bad would actually have a book available to read itself to them. And she didn't wait for anyone to tell her to hide the tree once again in a pouch. Okay, writers, that is the end of today's chapter. At this point, you might realize that previously there was some foreshadowing when Shaful almost lost her eye. Also, you see Waggler trying out the elephant as an even more interrelated than before. And you see the turpitude of King Pomodestone and some of his soldiers. What kind of immorality would there be to just burn someone? How horrible would it be to think that if the person actually burned, they were innocent? Is that the only way to prove innocence to this king? King Pomodestone has a person burned alive. Then he declares them innocent. But at that point, the person is already dead. King Pomodestone deeply fears the witching community, so he suspects many people. However, King Pomodestone's moral turpitude is so severe that these four soldiers are questioning things, especially Anton, whose mother was a witch. Anton is quite angry that he became what killed his father. Leave a comment below on how you would feel if you were Anton and you learned this. Would you be angry? Would you suddenly turn that anger on the witching community in the room? Would you switch sides? Anton and the other three know how many soldiers are against them. Or at least they know how many are in their group. They may not know about the second group, but they know how many are against them. So wouldn't switching sides be a death wish? Lots of questions to answer. That's why this is fun. I could head in multiple different directions, but I get to choose which direction I go. Also, leave a comment on Joshua's eye. Did you expect someone doing that spell to have their eye cut off while it was extended? Honestly, I thought of that long ago when Shaful and Arswaya were in the tree and looking to where the dogs were going, but I saved it for the battle. Makroon tried to warn her, but it was too late. How would you feel if you just lost your eye and soldiers are in the tunnel? Would you want Makroon to stay with you and not leave you? Makroon's sentiments were, what a danger. And I quite agree with that. Join me Tuesday to discuss erudite, intrepid, and tenacious. Great terms for characteristics for your characters. Join me Friday for chapter 19 of Tajiia. excuse me, more soldiers in the mountains. Visit my website, bymykela.com, and read some character bios. Leave a comment on which characters on the website are your favorites so far. I hope you're enjoying writing your stories as much as I am. Don't forget to share your stories by sending them to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. That's the chapter exchange part. When you share your chapter with me, no polishing required. There's so many mistakes. Some of the mistakes that were there, I corrected it as I read it instead of stopping and typing it. But I need now to go back and fix them. So no polishing required. This is just fun stuff. This is writers together. It's not an editor. I'm not an editor, So you send your story to me. I'm not going to say, oh, you did this and you did. I might mention that. Okay, did you know this or did you know that? Because it could be part of your story or your setting or your time frame that you're using certain language or you're doing something. I've had readers to help me find certain things. I'm just like, oh my goodness. One of the things I used to do, I spell with, W-I-T-H-E, and it was supposed to be with thee, but I never separate. But I got past that. But there's other things that you can mess up when you're writing. So I'm not an editor. I'm not a critic. I'm here to help you. I'm here to read your stories and enjoy your stories. I'm here to help you come up with questions just so that you can go on with your story and you can take it further along, or you can interrelate your events or whatever. So this is the fun stuff. This is not anything to be afraid of or whatever. There's no polishing, no criticism, nothing. Just fun. So send your chapters to me. Let me read them, and we will have fun together. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.